if you were part of the horror community, and even if you're not, you probably in your life have read a Stephen King book or seen a Stephen King movie. There is a good chance or possibility. So today we're going to do the King of Horror Stephen King tag. I was tagged by Jess Bookgirl TV, and I do love me some Stephen King, so I thought this would be a fun tag to do. So we're gonna get into it right now. So the first question is, how did you get into reading Stephen King? I think I got some of my first Stephen King books at the library. I believe one of my friends was probably reading Stephen King at the time. We all kind of read a lot of horror, like R.L. Stine, Christopher Pike, Stephen King. My first Stephen King book, which I hope this is not a question, it probably is, I didn't read them before I started. I like to just jump in. Let's go. Was Salem's Lot, which I got from the library. So yeah, it just kind of started from there. I remember seeing him in like Creepshow. I've just always been kind of a lifelong horror fan. I always found other books to be kind of boring when I was younger growing up. I like other books now, but when I was younger, all I really wanted to read was horror. Not sure why or what that says about me, but yeah, Stephen King discovered at the library and probably through my friends. And the next question is, what was the first Stephen King book you read? Which I just answered, and it was Salem's Lot. So the next question after that, have you read a Stephen King book published the year you were born? Honestly, I have no idea. He has a lot of books. It's possible that I have. Instead, I just kind of go by the cuff. But it's seat of my pants for these. Which of his books do you prefer to collect? Hardcover editions, paperbacks, or it doesn't matter to you? Honestly, it doesn't matter. If I could afford to just buy all hardcovers, I probably would. But either or, if I see used books that are paperback and they're Stephen King and they're ones that I want, I'll just grab those. If they're hardcover, cool. I've gotten a lot of my hardcovers from the library sales that we have, because the library will have their sales like a couple times a year. And the horror section was only ever like Anne Rice and Stephen King. They never really have much that's that great, but they do have Stephen King. So I've gotten most of my hardcovers for like $1 from the library sale. Gotta love the library. How many of his books are on your bookshelf? I had to turn around and count them. Currently, there are 10 of his books on my bookshelf. Stephen King is known for long and gory novels. Which of his novels was tough for you to read? None of them, because I read all the horror and the gore and the terror. I haven't found a horror book yet that has been that super hard for me to read. I don't like when animals are hurt in very violent ways. So some of stuff like that, there are parts, but there's never been a full book. Have you DNF'd a Stephen King book? Not in any recent times, but I definitely DNF'd. I think it was 4 Past Midnight. I was reading when I was a teenager. I started it, I got it from the library, and I never finished it. I just lost interest. But that was when I was a teenager. Who knows? Try it again, maybe I'll like it. I don't know. Have you read his books in publication order? Oh, heck no. No, not at all. I've read them all over the moon. Cause yeah, Salem's Lot was my first one. Then I read Carrie, and Carrie was his first book, so I did not read that in order. And then I've kind of jumped around with like The Shining and Firestarter and Fairy Tale and Pet Sematary. I bounced all over the place. I did not read them in publication order. What Stephen King books would you like to read but haven't read yet? I am patiently waiting for my library copy of Holly to come in. So that one. Next is, name a book he has written that other people liked but you didn't. I don't know. I don't feel like I've read enough of them to say that. I've read like only most of the classics and some of the newer ones. And I don't think there was one that people liked that I didn't. At least currently. It could still happen. It just hasn't happened yet. See, name a book of his you think is underrated. I can't. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that one. Creepy characters. Which Stephen King character would you like to have dinner with? That is a question. I would like to have dinner with child Danny Torrance, and we could talk about what was going on in his brain, the things that he would see. I'd like to talk to him about that. Otherwise, I don't really know who the heck I'd want to have dinner with outside of that. The Shining is my favorite. Next up, has Stephen King inspired you to start reading and writing? No. Although his book on writing is one of the best that I have read. I absolutely love that book. His book's really good, and I also love this other book called Bird by Anne Lamott. It's a fantastic book on writing. If you haven't read the Stephen King book on writing, it's awesome. I lied earlier. I have 11 Stephen King books on my shelf because I have his book on writing too. I didn't count that one. My mom inspired me to start reading and writing, if I'm honest. And I used to write poetry. I was a music journalist, so I worked in media for several years and wrote that way. Never wrote any books. Mainly it was just journalism stuff, and I would write poetry on the side, and then I also keep journals, which I restarted up recently. If you were able to meet Stephen King, what would you say? I would just sit down and we talk about books. Like, what is he currently loving that he's reading? What does he like to do when he's not writing? I don't know, just have like a nice sit down conversation. I don't have any like burning questions I want to ask. Just hang out, have some coffee, and talk books. It'd be great. Next is, have you ever been to Bangor, Maine? I have not, but one day I hope to also take my picture outside of his house, like everybody on Instagram does. Which do you prefer more, his books or movies? I mean, give me all the books. I don't watch a ton of movies. I prefer books, just in general, like as a blanket statement, over any movie for the most part. Name your favorite Stephen King movies. Okay, so my favorite Stephen King movies are probably Shawshank Redemption and Misery. Those two are great. So that was the Stephen King tag. If you thought that was fun and think you might like to do it, consider yourself tagged. And if you're a fan of tag videos, next video coming up will be another tag video. So stick around, check it out. And if you had fun hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.